Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to break down a massive structural shift in the global AI hardware ecosystem. It's a shift that happened right under our noses in the summer of 2026, and it's literally rewriting the rules of who builds, controls, and governs the physical infrastructure of artificial intelligence. You know, we so often get caught up in the software side of things, the language models writing our code or drafting our emails. But today, we're looking at the concrete, the silicon, and the billions of dollars flowing behind the scenes that make all of those everyday tools actually work.
Okay, let's map out our agenda real quick. We're going to cover 5 key areas. First, the AI hardware shift. Second, South Korea's $649 billion bet. Third, Anthropic's custom silicon pivot. Fourth, the export control catalyst. And finally, the new trusted ecosystem.
All right, diving right into Section 1, the AI hardware shift, a unified assessment.
To start, we really need to look at 3 seemingly separate developments from late June and early July 2026. This timeline hits the nail on the head for our convergence framework. On day 1, in late June, South Korea announces a historic AI infrastructure investment. Just 3 days later, reports leak that AI heavyweight Anthropic is in deep talks with Samsung for microscopic 2-nanometer custom chips. And then, boom, by day 7, the US abruptly lifts export controls that had absolutely crippled Anthropic's global models. These 3 massive announcements hitting within days of each other? Yeah, that's not a coincidence. It signals a highly coordinated geopolitical and commercial pivot. They are absolutely cause and effect.
Moving on to Section 2, South Korea's $649 billion bet.
If you want to understand the future of the AI tools you rely on, you've got to follow the money. And right now, an unimaginable amount of it is flowing directly into the Korean peninsula. South Korea is committing $649 billion. That translates to roughly 1,000 trillion won over a 10-year period. I mean, wow. To put that into perspective, you could literally buy several entire countries for that price tag. Announced by President Lee Jae-myung alongside Samsung and SK Group, it's the largest combined corporate investment in South Korean history. They are using this massive war chest to permanently anchor themselves as the indispensable bedrock of the global AI supply chain.
So, where is all that money going? Well, this initiative, backed by South Korea's new AI Framework Act, is divided into what they're calling 3 mega projects. First, you've got massive expansions in semiconductor fabrication for both memory and logic chips. Second, a colossal build-out of AI data centers aiming for an unbelievable 18.4 gigawatts of power capacity by 2035. 18.4 gigawatts. Just to give you an idea, that's enough juice to power tens of millions of homes. And third, physical AI, meaning robotics and autonomous systems. They're basically expanding their dominance from just manufacturing the chips to actually powering the data centers and building the physical robots that'll run on them.
And the data shows exactly why South Korea feels so confident making a bet this big. Samsung and SK Hynix already control roughly 80% of the global market for high-bandwidth memory, or HBM. As we know, this is the highly specific memory architecture required for all major AI accelerators right now. Pretty much every single major AI system deployed in 2026 relies on Korean high-bandwidth memory to function. They already have the leverage, now they're just expanding the playing field.
Now, it hasn't been completely smooth sailing domestically. The crown jewel of this initiative is a new fabrication cluster in the Honam region, and that specific site selection sparked a really fierce domestic debate. The political opposition pointed out that the Honam region delivered 85% of its vote to the sitting president's party, arguing the spot was chosen purely for electoral geography, especially given some real constraints on water and power there. On the flip side, the president's office countered by citing regional development logic and the urgent need to decentralize industry away from Seoul. But regardless of this political friction, the strategic global significance of this massive capacity expansion remains totally intact.
All right, Section 3, Anthropic's custom silicon pivot.
This is where the massive hardware capacity we just talked about crashes right into frontier AI development. The key differentiator here is that unlike SK Hynix and Micron, who only manufacture memory chips, Samsung operates a full-scale foundry. Anthropic recently closed a $65 billion Series H fundraising round, bringing in SK Hynix, Micron, and Samsung. But because Samsung has that full-scale foundry, they can actually manufacture custom logic chips to a client's exact specifications. They offer a comprehensive, end-to-end partnership that the other memory providers just can't match.
I mean, dropping $500 million just to design a custom chip, that's not exactly pocket change. But for Anthropic, the economics have shifted dramatically. They can suddenly swallow that estimated $500 million design cost because their annualized revenue run rate absolutely exploded, from roughly $9 billion at the end of 2025 to over $30 billion in early 2026. When you're pulling in that kind of revenue, paying a massive premium to third-party compute providers just doesn't make sense anymore. Achieving hardware independence becomes a financial necessity.
And here's a really fascinating micro-level detail that proves this is the real deal. Anthropic recently poached Clive Chan, an early key player from rival OpenAI's custom silicon team. You don't just hire top-tier, highly specialized silicon talent from your biggest competitor just to explore a fun little concept. Actually, scratch that. It proves they have a deep, genuine operational commitment to bringing their own custom hardware to life.
Let's move to Section 4, the Export Control Catalyst.
So, what accelerated this whole corporate restructuring for Anthropic and its partners? Well, imagine waking up one morning and finding out your flagship product is globally suspended. No warning, just gone. That is exactly what happened to Anthropic. Following a sudden U.S. Commerce Department export control directive on June 12, they were hit with a terrifying 15-day global blackout of their advanced Mythos-class models. Access was only restored after some incredibly intense bilateral negotiations. This brutal shock showed Anthropic exactly how vulnerable they were to sudden regulatory surprises.
Which brings us to this vital concept of supply chain sovereignty. That 15-day blackout made it a top operational priority for Anthropic to escape its reliance on third-party compute providers like Google, Amazon, and NVIDIA. Why? Because those third parties have their own complex ties to the US government and their own regulatory vulnerabilities. Anthropic realized, hey, we need to control our own destiny here, from the raw chip design all the way up to model deployment. Okay, let's take a step back for a second and ask the really big question. We've got South Korea pouring $649 billion into infrastructure. We have Anthropic pivoting to a Samsung foundry for custom chips, and we have the sudden lifting of a crippling export control on Anthropic's models. Why did all three of these distinct events snap in together like puzzle pieces in the exact same week in the summer of 2026?
The answer to that is in Section 5, the new trusted ecosystem.
These aren't isolated incidents. They're the coordinated execution of a unified geopolitical and technological strategy. It all hinges on this framework called Pax Silica. Basically, Pax Silica is a supply chain governance structure premised entirely on trusted relationships among U.S. allied technology partners. South Korea is a key signatory here. By embedding their custom silicon manufacturing within South Korea, a trusted allied tier, U.S. companies like Anthropic can navigate complex export controls way more predictably. So, the restoration of Anthropic's models wasn't just some regulatory rollback, it was a clear enabler to get this new allied supply chain functioning.
When we zoom out, the big picture is undeniable. A massive restructuring of the AI supply chain is fully underway. Specifically, we're seeing a strategic move away from relying so heavily on concentrated manufacturing in Taiwan. Instead, there's a direct alignment of U.S. frontier AI companies with South Korean fabrication power. Pax Silica is no longer just a high-level tech policy being tossed around in diplomatic meetings. As of July 2026, it transitioned into a concrete, multi-billion-dollar operational reality.
I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to end our explainer today. We are literally watching the physical and political architecture of artificial intelligence being completely rewritten in real time. As the reliance on third-party hardware wanes and these massive state-backed allied ecosystems rise up, who will truly hold the power over the next decade of human technological advancement? Will it be the companies designing the models, the nations pouring hundreds of billions into the silicon, or the alliances governing the space between them? Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep questioning the infrastructure beneath the technology you use every single day.